Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
I'm definitely excited for this one.
Me too. Today, we're going deep into Chapter 2 of the Astabakra Gita. This chapter really gets to the heart of, well, self-realization.
Yeah, it's like King Janaka just got his enlightenment upgrade in Chapter 1, and now he's giving us the full download on what it actually feels like.
Right. Like imagine having this huge, mind-blowing shift and then trying to put it into words. That's what we get to witness in Chapter 2. So before we get lost in the verses themselves, can we recap quickly where we are in the story?
Sure thing. So this is a dialogue, right? It's between the sage Astabakra and King Janaka, who, as you said, just had this major enlightenment breakthrough.
We're basically eavesdropping on a conversation between a master and a freshly enlightened being.
Exactly. And what makes the Astabakra Gita so unique is its laser focus.
Yeah.
Pure self-realization, no detours into, like, morality or self-improvement.
Straight to the point, no fluff. I love that. All right, so let's dive into Chapter 2, verse by verse, paragraph by paragraph. And Janaka wastes no time. Right out of the gate in the first few verses, he says, I am now spotless and a peace awareness beyond consciousness. All this time, I have been duped by illusion.
It almost sounds like, whoa, I was so caught up in the surface level of things that I missed the real deal.
Right, yeah, like a total facepalm moment. He's realizing that true reality is this pure awareness, something beyond our usual understanding of consciousness. But then, verse 2.2, he throws this curveball. By this light alone, the body and the universe appear. I am everything or nothing.
I know, right? That everything or nothing line always trips people up. It seems contradictory.
It totally does. How can you be everything and be nothing?
Well, it's getting at the core of non-duality, which is the whole foundation of the Astabakra Gita. From the ultimate perspective, there's no separation. Think of space. It contains everything, but it's essentially empty.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it. It's like we're so conditioned to see the world in opposites, this versus that, me versus you, that the idea of total oneness is mind-blowing.
It is, but Janaka, being the amazing teacher that he is, uses these really vivid metaphors in the next few verses to help us grasp it.
Oh yeah, the metaphors. He says stuff like, as waves, foam, and bubbles are not different from water, so the universe emanating from self is not different from self. And then he brings in this image of cloth and threads. Look closely at cloth, you see only threads. Look closely at creation, you see only self.
Exactly. He's saying, look around you. The proof of oneness is literally everywhere. He even uses sugarcane as an example. As sweetness pervades sugarcane juice, I am the essence of creation.
It's like sweetness is part of the juice, you can't separate them. The self is the essence woven into everything. I love how these simple examples make such a complex idea click. But then he shifts gears a little bit in verses 2.7 to 2.0 and focuses on the idea of misperception.
Ah, yes, the illusions.
Yeah. He starts talking about things like a rope that you mistake for snake, or silver that seems to appear in mother of pearl, or a mirage in the desert.
Classic examples of how our senses can trick us, right? He's basically saying the whole universe, from the enlightened perspective, is like one giant optical illusion.
Whoa. It's like those optical illusion pictures where you think you see one thing, but then you shift your perspective and it's completely different.
Exactly. And he drives this point home with more metaphors. The universe returning to the self is like a pot returning to clay, like a wave merging back into the water, or a bracelet melting back into gold.
So the source of everything, the ultimate reality, is the self.
That's the idea.
Okay, that's a lot to take in. But you know, it's interesting. In verses 2.11 to 2.15, there's a shift in Janaka's tone. It's not just about peace or clarity anymore. It's almost like that excitement.
Right. It's like this childlike wonder. He's exploring this newfound freedom, reveling in it.
He even says, I am wonderful indeed beyond adoration. I cannot decay nor ever die, though God and all the universe should perish to the last blade of grass. He's not just immortal, he's observing the universe within himself, totally unfazed by it.
That's the liberation that comes with understanding, right? It's like watching a movie but not getting caught up in the drama. You can enjoy the story without getting emotionally invested.
I like that analogy. And then he makes this point about the power of thought. In reality, knowledge, the knower, and the knowable do not exist. I am the transparent self in which through ignorance they appear. He's suggesting even our thoughts are kind of like illusions too, right?
It's radical, isn't it? Our thoughts are constantly coming and going. If we cling to them as our true identity, we're setting ourselves up for suffering.
Which brings us to verse 2.16, where he basically identifies the root of all our misery. Looking at one and seeing many is the cause of all misery. The only cure is to realize what is seen is not there. So as long as we're stuck in this illusion of separation, we're going to suffer.
That's the message, for sure. We create suffering by believing in our separateness, the separateness of everything around us. The key is to see through that and recognize the underlying unity of all things.
Easier said than done. Right. But Janaka seems to have totally embraced this. In verses 2.17 and 2.18, he's like, I am unbounded awareness. Only in imagination do I have limits. Reflecting on this, I abide in the absolute. I am neither free nor bound. The illusion of such things has fallen into disbelief. He's not just talking about it, he's living it.
He's embodying that non-dual perspective, transcending the limits of the mind, recognizing his true nature as this boundless awareness.
And he really emphasizes this in verse 2.19. Having seen for certain that this universe and body is without form or substance, I am revealed as awareness alone. Imagination has no place here. No more concepts, no more beliefs, just direct experience of reality.
It's quite a shift. I want you to consider something here. How much of your own suffering comes from clinging to this limited self-image?
Ooh, that's a deep one. I'm gonna have to think about that.
We all should. Because if we can even start to loosen that grip, even a little, it can open the door to incredible freedom.
That's a powerful thought, and I think we're going to need a moment to process that before we jump into the next part of chapter 2.
It really does make you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of these verses. They go beyond just intellectual concepts. They draw you in and make you really feel the depth of it all.
It's like Janika's inviting us to experience that vastness ourselves, to really get what it means to be both the wave and the ocean at the same time. But if we're all connected like that, does that mean our individual lives, our happiness, our struggles, it's all just an illusion?
It's not that our experiences aren't real, but it's more about how we interpret them. We get so attached to this idea of a separate self, and from that limited view, everything feels separate, leading to all sorts of clinging and suffering.
So it's not denying reality, but shifting our perspective on it. We're not separate waves battling it out. We're expressions of the same ocean.
Exactly. And when you start to see it that way, it can be incredibly liberating.
I can imagine. So if I'm getting this right, it's not about erasing our individual identities, but realizing that our individuality is an expression of that underlying oneness.
That's a great way to put it. It's like appreciating the unique wave patterns, the different forms, while knowing it's all just water in essence.
And recognizing this, making that shift, is what leads to real freedom.
Right. When we see through that illusion of separation, we stop clinging so tightly, we stop resisting, and there's a sense of peace with things as they are.
It's like let go or be dragged. Maybe real freedom is about letting go of that need to control, to define, to separate everything.
That's beautiful. It's surrendering to the flow of life, trusting in something bigger than we can grasp with our minds.
It makes you think about how much suffering we create just by holding on to a fixed sense of self, our beliefs, desires, fears. What if we could just let go of all that? To just be present, like Janica. Pure awareness.
That's the question worth exploring, and maybe the rest of chapter 2 can give us some clues about how that feels. What stands out to you in the next few verses?
Well, I'm noticing Janica keeps coming back to that idea of the self being everything and nothing. It's like he's really trying to wrap his mind around it to fully embody it.
He is. And that's such a key part of the journey. It's one thing to understand intellectually, but to really live it, to make it a felt experience. That's where the real transformation happens.
It's not enough to just read about it. You have to find ways to make it real in your own life.
Exactly. So as we keep going with these verses, I want you to think about how these teachings resonate with you. What feels true? What challenges what you believe? And most importantly, how can you apply these insights to your everyday life?
I love that. That's a great way to frame it. Okay, so moving on. In verse 2.20, Janica describes the universe as dancing within him. He's not seeing it as separate or threatening, but as part of this cosmic dance.
There's that playfulness again, right? Like recognizing that even though the world seems chaotic and unpredictable, it's all unfolding within that vastness of the self.
Like watching a storm from a cozy cabin. You can appreciate the power without getting swept away by it.
And then in verse 2.21, he says, I am the witness, the essence, the support, and the experiencer. I am the absolute, eternal, and free. He's claiming his true identity, not the limited self, but as the ground of being itself.
It's such a powerful statement. And it makes me wonder, how often do we get caught up in our roles, thoughts, emotions, and forget about that underlying awareness that's always there?
All the time. We get lost in the content of our minds, the ups and downs, and miss that unchanging awareness that experiences it all.
So maybe this journey of self-realization is about remembering, about reclaiming that true identity.
That's a beautiful way to think about it. And as we go through the rest of chapter 2, we'll see Jenica continuing to explore this, to peel back those layers of illusion and uncover the truth that's been there all along.
I'm ready for the next layer. It feels like we're on the verge of something really amazing here. Okay, so picking up where we left off in verse 2.22, Jenica says, I am the stainless, infinite awareness. What can touch me? He sounds so fearless, so confident.
It's like he's saying, I've seen behind the curtain, nothing can shake me now. That's the power of realizing your true nature as pure awareness. It liberates you from fear and doubt.
And then, verse 2.23 paints this beautiful picture. In the limitless ocean of myself, the winds of the mind roil the myriad waves of the world. It's like he's describing our thoughts and emotions, all those ups and downs, as waves on the surface of a vast, still ocean.
He's acknowledging that, yeah, the world will have its storms, its rough patches, but those experiences don't have to define you. You can stay grounded in that inner stillness no matter what's happening around you.
And then in verse 2.24, he says, but when the wind subsides in the limitless ocean, the arc of personhood is swallowed up, along with the universe it carries. It's such a powerful image of surrender, of letting go of that limited sense of self and merging back into the infinite.
That arc of personhood, it's our ego, our individual identity. And when we quiet the mind, when we surrender to the present moment, that limited self dissolves, and what's left is that boundless awareness that was always there.
And then he ends with this beautiful line in verse 2.25, and how wonderful it is. In the limitless ocean of myself, waves of beings arise, collide, play for a time, then disappear, as is their nature. He's not just describing the cycle of life and death, he's celebrating it.
He's gone beyond fear, beyond grief, because he understands that everything is constantly changing, arising and passing away in this vastness of being. It's like watching fireworks. You can appreciate the beauty of each burst without clinging to it, knowing it will eventually fade.
It's a whole new way of seeing things, isn't it? Instead of separate, permanent things, it's all this flowing dance of energy and form.
And within that dance, there's this deep connection, this understanding that we're all part of the same cosmic play. And nothing is truly lost, it just transforms.
Wow. This whole chapter has been such a journey, such an exploration of self-realization. What's the most impactful takeaway for you from all of this?
For me, it's about the power of perspective. Jenica didn't change who he was at his core, he shifted how he saw himself and the world. He recognized his true nature as this boundless awareness, and it set him free.
And it's important to remember, this is a journey, not a destination, right? We might not all have these sudden enlightenment moments, but we can cultivate this expanded awareness through things like meditation, self-reflection, even just paying attention to the present moment.
Exactly. It's about noticing when we're caught up in our thoughts and emotions and gently bringing ourselves back to that place of stillness, that inner awareness.
And maybe as we practice, we'll start to see the world with a little more wonder, a little more acceptance, just like Janaka.
If the universe really is a wave in that ocean of self, what does it mean to ride that wave, to be aware, to be present, but not attached? That's something to think about, isn't it?
Definitely something to ponder. We encourage you to revisit Chapter 2 of the Astabakra Gita and see what new insights you discover. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the heart of self-realization. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep expanding your awareness.